Where did God come from? Most everyone knows the Christian's response to this question. God is eternal. He did not come from anywhere.
Well, isn't that convenient? I especially love the part where he just says this as if we're supposed to take it for granted. Let's do this.
Round one, fight!
Delusion!
Logic boo! Logic boo!
You win!
Greetings, fellow space travelers. BionicDance here. Today we've got ourselves something a little bit goofy. The question is where God came from. And Dude Boy here is not just going to make unfounded assertions, but he's also going to get the argument on the other side disastrously wrong.
Although atheists may think that this answer is unscientific and merely an attempt to avoid the question, in truth, observation and reason declare otherwise.
For the last week or so, I've been having an email discussion with a guy from 1 Minute Apologist, and one thing that keeps coming up is a priori reasoning versus a posteriori reasoning. That is to say, purely theoretical deduction versus reasoning from known facts and experiences, pure argument versus hard data. And much as this fellow will attempt to claim otherwise, he is not going to present us with anything other than the former.
The question, where did God come from, or what caused God, assumes that God had a cause.
As opposed to assuming he didn't, or that he even exists in the first place. You don't know, and neither does anyone else. All we have is the say-so of people who are really invested in it being true.
However, by definition, an eternal spirit, the everlasting God, cannot logically have a cause.
And logically speaking, the idea that an eternal spirit exists is quite unreasonably silly. It makes for great storytelling, but it matches nothing we've ever seen in the real world, except by people thousands of years ago whose ability to study and measure the world make the technobabble in Star Trek seem like it was written as a collaboration by Einstein and Hawking. Forgive me if I don't trust it. And you can't define God into existence. You can say that your deity is an eternal spirit, but why should I believe you? Why shouldn't I believe in a different religion? Or no religion at all? What reason is there to suspect that spirits exist and that any of them are eternal? This guy's making sandwiches without bread.
Asking about God's cause is as incoherent as asking why matter is eternal.
Is anybody claiming that matter's eternal? A reasonable argument can be made that matter will stick around forever in the future, which would make it infinite in one temporal direction, so in that way you could say that matter is eternal. But this guy's definition of eternal expects that, if matter is eternal, then it will have existed infinitely in the past as well. Of course, he doesn't address a quite relevant question. If God can do it, why can't matter? What prevents that from being so? By what mechanism is being eternal even possible? So many assumptions made and left unaddressed.
Matter's not eternal. Matter is no more an eternal essence without a cause than God is a physical being with a cause.
An eternal essence. What does that even mean? That description would make a lot more sense if we were discussing pantheism with no deity. But we're not. After sorting through all of the ads for essential oils, a Google search and a bit of reading later makes this no more clear. It seems, in this context, that essence is more than just what something is like. Essence has a kind of independent existence. Your soul is your essence, some sort of spiritual thing that inhabits your body, and I guess God is made of the same stuff. I've read sci-fi and fantasy that was more coherent, frankly.
Asking where did God come from is like asking when did eternity start? By definition, eternity never began.
This guy says the words by definition a lot. His entire argument seems to hinge on it. Whether those definitions are relevant, whether they even describe something real, is taken for granted. Believers love to scoff at this, but what is more likely really? That an eternal and all-powerful deity exists, or that people invented one out of their own imagination? If you did your best to willingly suspend your disbelief, which of those two would be the easiest to accept, really? We've seen people make up stories. We have no evidence that anything can exist outside of time. We can attempt to conceive of the possibility. We can say whatever we like. But that doesn't mean it's real, no matter how hard you might wish. Making up stories is the more plausible explanation.
Eternity is without beginning and end. By definition, so is God.
See,
Friends, from what we observe in nature, matter and energy are neither created nor destroyed. Scientists refer to this observed fact as the first law of thermodynamics.
the first law of thermodynamics doesn't say that matter cannot be created or destroyed. It says that the total amount of energy in a closed system remains constant. On the quantum level, however, energy does appear able to pop in and out of existence. We don't exactly know how or why yet, but we do know that these fluctuations could be responsible for the existence of the universe. No God required.
Evolutionists allege that the universe began with the explosion of a ball of matter 13 to 14 billion years ago.
Evolutionists? Where did that come from? Not one tiny scrap of this has anything to do with evolution. Theists seem to use this term to refer to just about anybody who thinks that science is a better explanation than their God, whether evolution is the question or not.
Yet they've never provided a reasonable explanation for the cause of this supposed original ball of matter.
Does anybody think that this guy would call an explanation that didn't involve his God's existence reasonable? I don't. I think you could explain it to him in way after way after way, and it wouldn't penetrate his beliefs in the slightest. I'd invite him to change my mind and show that he's open to being wrong, though.
An attempt was made a few years ago in an issue of New Scientist magazine titled The Beginning: What Triggered the Big Bang. Notice, however, what the evolutionist David Shiga stated in the last line of the article. The quest to understand the origin of the universe seems destined to continue until we can answer a deeper question. Why is there anything at all instead of nothing? The fact is, a logical, naturalistic explanation for the origin of the original ball of matter that supposedly led to the universe does not exist.
Sure it does. Like I said, quantum physics.
It cannot exist so long as the first law of thermodynamics is true, that matter and energy cannot create themselves.
2 minutes on Google, less really, will show that this guy doesn't know what he's talking about with regard to thermodynamics. His entire argument falls apart because of that lack of understanding. In fact, I could end the video right here and plant a victory flag. But where's the fun in that? Spin on.
Since the physical universe exists, and yet it could not have created itself, then the universe is either eternal or something or someone outside of the universe must have created it. Relatively few scientists propose that the universe is eternal. In fact, there would be no point in attempting to explain the beginning of the universe, with the Big Bang, for example, if scientists believed it's always existed.
The Big Bang was an expansion from a singularity and not a creation event. What made up the universe was already there, but super compressed, which may have also meant that time itself was stopped. For that reason, the universe might be eternal, sometimes out of time, sometimes not. Or rather, that's one explanation for it. There are others. But God is superfluous to all of them. We don't need a deity to explain the universe.
What's more, the second law of thermodynamics, which states that matter and energy become less usable over time, has led scientists to conclude that the universe has not always existed. That is, it's not eternal.
That doesn't make any sense. Just because the universe can end up crappier over time doesn't mean it'll ever stop existing.
So why don't the laws of thermodynamics or the laws of causality apply to God? Because these scientific laws, like all scientific laws, apply to what we find and study in nature. And again, by definition, God is not natural, and thus is logically not subject to the laws of nature.
Well, isn't that convenient? By definition, a character from a book can do things we don't see in the real world. Oh, and he's real, by the way. Sure he is.
If matter is not eternal, and it cannot create itself, then the only logical conclusion is that something or someone outside of nature, who is supernatural, caused the material universe and everything in it. Christians call this someone the eternal God, because he is from everlasting to everlasting.
Oh, you're pretty. So before I go, I have a very special thank you to a fella named Greg who dropped by San Diego and gave me this. And check it, it lights up. How cool is that? I can't say thank you enough. This is really neat. And you'll notice it has my slogan all over it. I'm about to say those words in a sec. So yeah, this is really cool. Thank you, Greg. Until next time, fellow space travelers, this is BionicDance saying don't run on automatic. Instead, please think. And Dude Boy here is not just going to make unfounded assertions, but he's also going to get the oglamouth. Whether those definitions are relevant, whether they seem to describe... We don't exactly know how or why, but we do know that these fluctuations.
Even YouTubers need Ferraris. Please donate on Patreon.
Vote me down and I shall become more powerful than you can possibly imagine.